Jon Allen is columnist for Roll Call, and he joins me now from Washington. Good to see you.
Hey, Vlad, how's it going?
Good, good. So let's start off with Giuliani removing his name from consideration for Secretary of State. I want to play a bit more of that interview he gave Fox News on Friday.
The whole thing was becoming kind of very confusing and very difficult for the president-elect. My desire to be in the cabinet was great, but it wasn't that great. And he had a lot of terrific candidates. And I thought I could play a better role being on the outside and continuing to be his close friend and advisor. That's sort of the role I played during the campaign. I never worked for the campaign. I was never part of it. Gave me a certain degree of independence in being able to give advice. And I saw that he had so many good candidates available. I mean, there was no reason to complicate his life any longer. So I withdrew back on the 29th.
All right, John. After that, I mean, even before that, you had Kellyanne Conway as recently as Friday morning suggesting that Rudy Giuliani is in the running, later saying it was a mutual decision. He says his desire to be in the administration was great, not that great. I mean, he had a prime speaking role at the RNC. What do you make of this? What do you think is going on?
He literally ran a campaign for Secretary of State that was more impressive than any of the campaigns he ran for mayor. Look, he got discarded by Trump like a used Diet Coke can. Might have hit the recycling bin if there was one of those in Trump Tower. This is a situation where quite clearly Donald Trump decided Rudy Giuliani couldn't be in his cabinet. He afforded him, he was gracious enough to afford him the opportunity to pretend that this was Rudy Giuliani's decision. I think he would have begged for basically any job that came with a security detail.
I mean, it is very surprising. It sounded to a lot of people like Mayor Giuliani was actively lobbying for the role. And John, why do you think then that somebody who was in Donald Trump's corner pretty much the entire time he was running for the presidency is now not going to be a part of his administration, and somebody like Mitt Romney, who I don't think there was a more forceful rejection of candidate Trump by anybody in politics, is now perhaps one of the top 2 or 3 folks that are being considered for that job?
Loyalty is a trait that Donald Trump values greatly in terms of people being loyal to him. Not necessarily clear that he thinks that runs 2 ways. He had 3 different campaign managers. Chris Christie got thrown under the bridge. Rudy Giuliani, as I said before, discarded. Yeah, I didn't mean the double entendre.
Yeah, that's a double entendre.
But, you know, look, he had people that were very close to him that really laid it on the line for him and are not going to end up with jobs in his administration. As far as Mitt Romney goes, I think he's trying to find the best Secretary of State. It's an important job. You know, at least by bringing Mitt Romney closer, it takes away potentially somebody who could really stand against him as a force within the Republican Party domestically. You know, when President Obama picked Hillary Clinton for Secretary of State, sure, he thought she'd make a great diplomat, but it also meant that the Democrat with the greatest standing against him was no longer playing around in the domestic playground. Same thing with Mitt Romney. If you send him across the globe, if you make him part of your team, he's not going to be somebody who's able to fight you on things. He's not going to be able to stand out and talk about the things that you're doing that he thinks are wrong. And even with this courtship, possibly, you know, I think there's a lesser chance that Mitt Romney ends up being that force. So I think Trump's pretty savvy. I just don't think he's very loyal.
That's interesting. So we've talked about Governor Romney. Someone else who's in the running for Secretary of State is Rex Tillerson, a man whose primary relationship with foreign countries is over business with oil and gas. He's also been rumored to have ties to Russia. Is this potentially troubling for Donald Trump?
I think potentially. You know, of the troubling nominees for various things, my guess is that Rex Tillerson is not high on the list in terms of not only Democrats but Republicans that sort of drop their jaw a little bit at some of these picks. So, look, there are a lot of state-run oil companies in the world, and perhaps Donald Trump's looking to replicate some of that. Oil obviously is a huge commodity, something that's very important in international discussions and debates. And in fact, a lot of people would argue the dominant commodity in terms of international relations. Rex Tillerson's understanding of that would make him a key ally of the president in negotiating with Russia, China, even some of the U.S.'s allies that have big oil programs. So, on that level, he makes some sense. On the level of him having any diplomatic experience, doesn't appear that there is any.
All right, John, let me ask you about this. Donald Trump has drawn criticism for stocking his administration with millionaires and billionaires. He's called it part of the plan. The Washington Post has a story out on Friday which says that of the 6 nominees that he is hoping to have as part of his administration, they've donated about $11.6 million to his campaign for the presidency. WWE co-founder Linda McMahon donated $7.5 million. This is a president-elect who ran a campaign saying that he would not be tied to the special interest groups. He would not be tied to the donors because he was funding his own campaign. And yet now we see with some of those nominees, they've given a large number of monies to the president-elect. What's going on there?
He may be trying to kill pay-to-play by hiring everybody who has the money to pay to play. I think, look, it's obviously completely at odds with what he campaigned on. He released a 2-minute video at the end of his campaign, sort of his closing argument, that talked about global international bankers and corruption. And he's basically filling his administration with former investment bankers from Wall Street, draining that swamp, finding the people that live there and moving them to Washington. It is so discordant with what he ran on that it almost has to be taken humorously. I don't expect that to change. And by the way, presidents have done this before. They usually don't campaign on cleaning up pay-to-play and then engaging in it.
Right. I mean, and to be fair, Penny Pritzker under President Obama,
Sure.
Don Evans under George W. Bush, Ronald Brown under President Clinton. These are folks that raised a lot of money for them and went on to have positions within the cabinet. But in the past,
and you can buy, by the way, you can buy an ambassadorship.
Well, I was going to say.
So I mean, like in any administration, you can buy an ambassadorship with campaign.
But that seemed to be the way of doing it in the past, right? You donate a lot of money to a presidential candidate, and you get a very plum ambassadorship. You get to be the ambassador to the Court of St. James in the United Kingdom, or to France, or to Italy. It was only the career Foreign Service officers who found themselves the ambassador, for example, to the Ivory Coast. And so I wonder why that's changed.
So far we haven't seen the list of ambassadors. I mean, we're really talking about right now at this point cabinet picks. They're generally speaking, you don't see a lot of cabinet picks go to like high-ranking donors or people who've given tons and tons of money. I mean, look, I think Donald Trump would argue, as Hillary Clinton did during her campaign, that any coincidence of donors and attention from the candidate is purely coincidence. It's just that Donald Trump ran against that.
All right, the president-elect will carry another title into the Oval Office, executive producer of the show he once hosted, The Celebrity Apprentice. Look, President Obama continued to receive royalties for the books that he had written, as he should. I mean, he was the owner and the property owner and the rights of those books, and the president-elect had a role in creating that show, The Apprentice. Is that unprecedented, or is that just normal?
I mean, it's different. I don't know if it's necessarily all that bad. I mean, it depends on if Donald Trump has any actual creative control over the show or any other or the network that it's on. If he doesn't have that leverage, if he's not using that leverage, then having the title and continuing to draw some kind of money from it doesn't seem all that terrible. If it's for the work that he's done in the past, much like President Obama, continuing to get royalties from very great selling books, I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah, and we should point out that President Obama reported $5.1 million in book sales in his first year in office. Of course, that amount fell to $56,000 last year.
We should all be so lucky, Vlad.
Yes, exactly. I'll even take the 56 grand, Jon Allen. Jon Allen in Washington for us. Thank you, John.
Take care, Vlad.